Hey everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock. Draft week is upon us. We did a Ham K pod yesterday. If you missed that, go back and check that out. Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We're continuing to get you ready for the draft and the offseason program actually starting today for the Browns as well. So a very busy week for this football team. Players coming back. They're going to add a bunch of new players. And let's start here. A report today from ESPN's Peter Schrager. That's a little weird to say. He's been there a few weeks now. He said that the Browns and the Giants, and this obviously came before Mike Borgonzi announced today the Titans were definitely picking at number one, but we all kind of knew that. So now the Browns and the Giants have been getting phone calls about potentially trading out of the number 2 and number 3 picks. And look, of course, they're going to get phone calls, but the interesting thing about this, and Mary Kay, you just posted the story about this at about 3 o'clock here on Tuesday, they aren't slamming the phone down. So in other words, they're at least listening. What does that mean? Does that mean that I guess what percentage would you put, or however you want to frame it, what does it mean as far as the likelihood that the Browns could decide to trade out of that number 2 pick?
Yeah, that's the whole key here, because taking phone calls or getting phone calls for number 2 and number 3, that's just business in the NFL. That happens every single year, especially when you have some transformational or generational type players at the top of the draft. And there are two in terms of Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. So, of course, the Browns are going to be getting phone calls. And of course, the Giants are going to be getting phone calls about those guys and others. It's just a matter of what the Browns do with those phone calls. Now, I think because they have at their disposal a player who really counts for 2 first-round picks, Travis Hunter has the potential to be a Pro Bowler both at receiver and at cornerback. If you can get 2 Pro Bowlers for the price of 1 in the first round, you're way ahead of the game there. So I think that it would be very, very difficult to pry that pick out of the Browns' hands, but not impossible. And how do we know that? Because Andrew Berry told us last week that they are still open to absolutely anything, whether it's trading up, whether it's staying put, trading back, trading for a veteran. Everything is still on the table.
So I could make the case for trading down. I wouldn't do it because just because I think even going back to like 2016, 2017, 2018, one of the things the Browns did when they collected all those picks is they were giving up these opportunities to pick like really elite players. And one of the things this roster lacks, because they just haven't had that opportunity the last few years because of the Deshaun Watson trade, is that ability to just add really elite top end talent. And now you've got the ability to do that. And like you said, Mary Kay, you could be getting a 2-for-1 in Travis Hunter, even if he's just a Pro Bowler on one side of the ball and just pretty good on the other. That's still really maximizing that number 2 overall pick. So I think I understand why they would take calls. And again, I can make that case. Maybe I will. I'll let you go first here, Ashley. But I just think the adding elite talent to this roster is something they absolutely need to do. And Travis Hunter, or if they shock us all and take Abdul Carter, those 2 guys represent that.
That's true. And I think the other problem is, like, things just seem so murky to me right now regarding Shedeur Sanders. And, like, in the past when we've talked about this, right, we've all made the case to varying degrees that, hey, if you don't want Shedeur and you think the Giants do, make them trade up and come get him and get something for that. But it just doesn't necessarily feel like it's guaranteed he will go 3 if the Browns do not take him, like I'm assuming we all think at this point they will not. So I think the issues with them, getting Jameis, getting Russ in New York they've set themselves up. So I think if they don't take a quarterback in the first round, it's also not the end of the world. So what if the Giants are sitting there and also really like Travis Hunter, and you really like Travis Hunter, and you give up that pick, you move down 1, and then he's gone? Like, I think if you really like him and want that production on both sides of the ball, it is just best to stay here. And I mean, at the end of the day, as Mary Kay said, like, this is business in the NFL. If people weren't calling about the top, like, 3 picks or whatever, this draft class would seriously be in question about its overall talent. Like, you're going to listen, but I do think it is just risky if you really want Travis Hunter to trade out of that spot right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the point you made there is a good one. That these teams at the top of the draft that we've all been saying all along need quarterbacks, including the Browns, have sort of addressed the position to some degree with veterans. Obviously, the Browns with Flacco and Pickett, the Giants, Russ Wilson and Jameis. The Jets went and got Justin Fields. The Raiders traded for Geno Smith. So it's kind of strange because maybe none of that precludes these teams from taking quarterbacks or even taking them high, but it's also telling you that they wanted to make sure those positions were set and not leave themselves short going into this. So anyway, the case, if you wanted to make the case for trading down, this is what I would say is maybe there's somebody you really love, as much as Travis Hunter. And I don't know who that would be, but maybe there's somebody you really love as much as Travis Hunter that you could get at 5 or 6 or something like that. You can add maybe a first round pick next year in the process. And I do think that this is sort of a 2 off-season deal, right? Like this is this season, they're adding a bunch of guys in the draft. I think we're going to see a bunch of young guys play. And then next season, maybe they're a little more aggressive in free agency. They're going to have a bunch of draft picks again. This is sort of a 2 off-season thing for this football team to really get back to where they want to be. And so maybe you look at that and say, okay, we can still get a really good player at 5 or 6, or I don't know. I don't think you'd want to drop down too far. And maybe add another first rounder next year when we might be in the quarterback game again. I don't know. We'll see what happens in this draft. It's a lot of maybes and buts and ifs. I can't really make the compelling case, Mary Kay, because I wouldn't do it. But I think that would be the case you would be making is, well, we could still get a really good player and maybe add another first round pick next year.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a strong case for doing it. But if you remember back to the last time they had the number 2 overall pick, they traded down with the Eagles away from Carson Wentz at number 2, and they got a haul for that. And then they traded it again and ended up with something like a dozen picks out of that one pick. And unfortunately for them, they just didn't have much to show for that at all. I mean, that was only in 2016, and there aren't really any remnants very much from that trade whatsoever. Maybe Denzel Ward. But really, it seemed to work out in the Eagles' favor, even though Carson Wentz didn't become their long-term answer. He still won enough games in 2017 that he pushed them over the top into their first Super Bowl victory. And they would take that any day of the week over again, I'm sure. They got their first championship out of it. And that is exactly why they made the move. So if you are trading away from a player who can help you win the Super Bowl, I don't think you necessarily want to do that. I really don't think that you want to do that. And then you would have to wonder how high the pick is going to be next year that you get. So if you get a first round pick next year and it turns out to be in the 20s, then that's not going to help you very much either. So I think there are things that you really have to think about in this regard. But I do think the case can be made. If you can go back not too far and get a player you absolutely love, and we have seen them bring in other players that they really like, including a Will Campbell, an offensive tackle, and you kind of need that position. At least you need it for the future. If you don't necessarily need it this year to have a starter, you certainly need to be restocking that position. So maybe you move down and you get something like that, and you get really good picks in return. Maybe a case can be made in that regard. But I still think that Travis is enough of a talent that they might just be better served by staying there.
Yeah. So Yeah, you mentioned the visit with Will Campbell. They had, I got to learn to say his name. I've just been saying his last name. The wide receiver, Teteroya McMillan from Arizona, come in. A lot of people see him as the top receiver in this draft. So they've had enough guys in that you would at least think. Did they have a Mason Graham visit? Do we know about that? I mean, he could be a potential guy if they trade back only a couple spots. So. And just because a guy didn't visit doesn't mean they wouldn't pick him either. So they've left that door open. There are at least some indicators out there that if somebody makes the right offer, maybe we would entertain it and make that pick. But the flip side of it is, man, you went 3-14. Like you should get rewarded somehow for being that bad, right? Like reward yourself, treat yourself, get yourself a guy like Travis Hunter who can be a superstar, who can be kind of that rare player who's not a quarterback but can still be the face of your franchise. Go in on this defense. You brought back Myles Garrett. We're going to talk about JOK a little bit later. Who knows about him, but he at least was in the building today. You still have some guys on that defense, and you're going to add more in this draft. So maybe get that defense back a little closer to what it was a couple years ago because of Travis Hunter. I don't know. To me, again, Ashley, it just goes back to the argument of here is an elite player staring you in the face who could help you on both sides of the ball, who could be a potential number one receiver, getting comps to guys like Justin Jefferson or prime Odell Beckham. Like, are you sure you want to pass on that, trade that away? Because that would almost be as bad as trading away a quarterback if he reaches his highest potential.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, again, like, you have to do your due diligence when you have a pick this high and see what teams are willing to offer you. But, I mean, the other thing we know about Andrew Berry and this regime is, like, once they decide they like somebody, it takes a lot to get them off that train of thought. We obviously see it when they make a deal like they did for Jerry Jeudy. That's somebody we knew they liked since 2020 and finally were able to get him last offseason, right? So these are things we're not going to know until the first round is over or until the draft is over. But I think we've all said it at different points too. Like, I could see Andrew Berry and this regime just absolutely falling in love with Travis Hunter, and maybe they've been in love with him for months because of his ability on both sides of the ball and his ball skills. And I just think at that point, like, if they truly are locked in and said, this is our guy, we think he could be a Pro Bowler on both sides of the ball, that production is going to be unmatched. He's the best player in the draft. We have him graded as the best player, and he falls to you at 2. Like, I think there's really, at that point, nothing that they would give up for that pick if they really do like him that much and have him graded head and shoulders above everybody else.
Now, the pick that is really interesting is that 33rd pick. Now, Mary Kay and Ashley, you have both just given that pick away, along with who knows what else, to go get Jalen Milroe. But let's say that doesn't happen. I kind of find that pick interesting if they are sitting there at 33, and that's always that weird pick where you're going to be spending pretty much that whole night on Thursday night and that whole day Friday where maybe your phone's going to be ringing, and that's more of an area where if you trade from 33 to 40, you're just not giving up as much as far as maybe the talent you'd be passing on as you would be at number 2. You're not giving up a Travis Hunter. Now, maybe there's a quarterback you really love. We'll see how this first round plays out. Maybe a bunch of those guys somehow make it to Friday night, and that changes the math a little on what you would do. But I think that's the pick that I'll put it this way. One way or the other, Mary Kay, I'm kind of to the point where I'd be a little surprised if they actually make that pick at 33, that either it ends up going into a trade back into the first round to get somebody, whether it's a quarterback or an edge rusher that's falling or something like that, or they trade it back. Just, that's where you can add maybe a 5th and maybe another pick next year, something like that. That becomes a really valuable pick.
Well, we know this about Andrew Berry. He likes to wheel and deal. He likes to be aggressive. He's opportunistic. So he's going to make some kind of a trade somewhere along the line in this draft. Besides, they've got 4 picks in the 6th round. So you know that he's not going to be wanting to make 4 picks in the 6th round. So something's going to happen somewhere along the line. As far as number 33 is concerned, I think it will, of course, depend on which quarterbacks are available at the end of day one. And if you have your selection of some of those quarterbacks that you've spent so much time on, then I think maybe you do just stay put and take one of them right there. But again, as you mentioned, by then you may have already used that to move up to the first round, which is what I wrote in my column that I think they should do for Jalen Milroe. I just think that I just feel very strongly about that. And the more I've talked to people, the more I've studied that situation. I really think that is something they should do. However, having said that, I don't know if he's going to last to a point where you actually could get your hands on him for a price that makes sense to you. And I don't think they want to give up the farm for him. So I don't even know if they really want him at all. Really, that is just something that I would do based on, watching him in person, based on talking to his quarterback's coach. I talked to him again just yesterday about some things. So I do think that is something that I would definitely be looking into doing. And I think that that whole number 33 pick could hinge upon which quarterbacks are still available at the end of day one.
Yeah, I think that's always a good point of clarification too when we're talking about this draft. It's not always what we think they'll do, it's what we think what they should do, right? Those are two separate conversations a lot of times. So even this number 2 pick, I think we're all fine with Travis Hunter, and I think we all think they're going to take Travis Hunter, but we also spent months on this podcast saying, like, find a quarterback and take a quarterback. And I would still, like, again, if you believe in one of these guys, just take the guy. But anyway, it's probably not going to happen. So, Ashley, that 33rd pick, you obviously, Mary Kay wrote her column yesterday. You put up your mock draft today where you made the trade to go get Jalen Milroe. So still, if they're sitting there at 33, would you expect them to make that pick? Would you expect it to get traded? I think that's where things get kind of fun and interesting for this team.
It is, and I do think so much of it depends for me specifically on where Shedeur Sanders ends up going, when he ends up going, and how the dominoes sort of fall after that. Because we've been having this back and forth amongst ourselves. I very much think there's a reality where Cam Ward goes 1, Shedeur goes somewhere in the first round, and maybe Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart would both be sitting there at 33. I don't think it's likely. It just feels improbable to me. At that point, we're talking this is more like the way the 2022 draft board fell when, ironically, Kenny Pickett was the only quarterback to go in the first round that year. So it has happened in recent memory, but teams do something unexpected, like the Falcons last year. Teams get panicky because maybe Shedeur goes higher than people thought. Maybe Shedeur goes 3 to the Giants, and other teams that need a quarterback want to jump on Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe. So in my third mock draft, I entertained the idea of, okay, he stay at 33 and take Milroe. Maybe he'll still be there. But there's just been so much buzz, and especially surrounding him and the Steelers for whatever reason. We don't cover the Steelers. Who knows how much of that is real, tangible, how much they like him, they're considering him. I don't know that firsthand, but to me, that just felt like, in doing this last mock draft, to explore what would it be like to jump ahead of them. So in the deal I made on the PFF simulator, I jumped 1 spot ahead of them. I got the Broncos pick at 20, and I gave them the 33rd pick. I gave them my pick 200 in the 6th round this year, which I believe is from Minnesota. And then I gave them my 2nd round pick next year. And the Broncos in return gave me pick 20 and this year's pick 122 in the 4th round. So I also kind of closed that gap a little bit. The simulator claims it had a 96% chance to be accepted. It was when I did it. Jalen Milroe was still there. So I grabbed him. But I mean, it's funny because, and I noted this in the story, we've talked about it, we haven't seen them trade up. They did it to get JOK. We've talked about that. He was falling. They could get really good value. But then I also keep thinking about, well, another time Andrew Berry was really aggressive was when he thought he found his franchise quarterback in Deshaun Watson. And it was aggressive in a different way, but he traded 3 first rounders and more to get Deshaun. So that is kind of the wild card to me in here is, hey, how strongly do they feel potentially about a Jalen Milroe? Jackson Dart would be another guy. Tyler Shook, right? Like these next tier guys. How strongly do they feel about any of them? One of them? A couple of them? Are they graded similarly? Do they think somebody's going to be available? But we do know, for as much as we say he doesn't typically trade up, as Mary Kay said, they have a lot of picks. You'd expect him to wheel and deal some of them. And we have seen him be aggressive before when he thinks he has a quarterback.
Thursday night is going to be crazy. Let's just say that. And we have talked a little bit about this, about, I'm starting to talk myself into what if these guys don't just go off the board. But Mary Kay, you wanted to add something there.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this more and more today. And you guys know I make bold, bold proclamations about what I think should happen in a draft. And this goes along with what you said before, Dan, about if you like a guy, just take him. There is part of me that would think strongly about just going ahead and taking Jalen Milroe at number 2. And I don't even know if the Browns like Jalen Milroe enough to take him anywhere in this draft. I really don't know. I know they like him. I don't know if they like him enough to draft him, to trade up for him. And once again, this falls in the category of, this is something that I would do, not necessarily something that I think they will do, because I certainly don't see them doing that. I don't see them passing on Travis Hunter, widely regarded as the best prospect in this draft, and drafting Jalen Milroe that high. None of us know if they even really like Jalen Milroe. I saw that Terry Pluto put Jackson Dart as his quarterback that would go along with Travis Hunter in one of his columns. So we don't know. We know they've spent time on Jackson and Jalen and Tyler Shook, but we don't know. But the reason why I would go ahead and do it is because I do think that he is going to develop into a really good NFL quarterback. And I'm willing to take that risk. What's the worst thing that can happen? These draft picks hit 50% of the time anyways. I mean, Jed Wills at number 10 didn't work out for them. So you just never know. I think the chance to hit it big on a prospect that can run like that, even run so much faster than Josh Allen, and that has a big arm like that, why not? Why not swing for the fences there? And if you miss, you miss. And I know that Jimmy Haslam at the NFL annual meetings put a lot of pressure on this pick and put a lot of pressure on Andrew Berry to get all of this right. I don't think it needs to be that way. I don't think you need to put a ton of pressure on yourself to absolutely 100% nail this. If you take a chance and it doesn't work out, then you go back again the next year and you figure it out. The chance to me to hit on a prospect like that is well worth it.
Well, and that's the interesting dynamic too, is some of it does come down to how secure do you feel, right? Like, I keep thinking about it, where people will talk about a Tyler Shook going in the first round, or a Jackson Dart going in the first round, or Jalen Milroe, but those picks have to be like, somebody's got to make that pick, and somebody has to be willing to stake their future to Jackson Dart in the first round, or to Tyler Shook in the first round. And I think there's going to be certain coaches and certain GMs that are going to say, I can't do that. Like, if I do that and I'm wrong, I'm looking for a job in a year or two. So again, that's why I think Thursday is going to be really fascinating, because there are also some coaches like a Mike Tomlin, like a Sean McVay, even a Kellen Moore, probably, right, who's a first-year coach there. You never know in this league, but he's probably got a little bit of a long leash to miss on a guy at number 9 if they feel like they need to take somebody. But if those guys go on the clock and they're like, you know what, I don't want to do it. I'd rather take him later. It's safer. I don't trust my situation enough that I want to put my career in the hands of Tyler Shook or Jackson Dart. That's all part of this too. And so that's what's going to make it really interesting. Real quickly, I do want to touch on video today. It's a walk-in day at the Browns facility, videos of guys walking into the building. And there was one significant guy, and that is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who we just still don't know his status for this season. Andrew Berry called it nebulous last week. We're going to talk to Kevin Stefanski on Wednesday. I would doubt that he'll offer any sort of real update on JOK's future or what could happen in 2025. But at least, Mary Kay, we saw Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah reporting for the first day of the voluntary offseason program, whether he's just going to be spending his spring doing rehab, whether we'll see him on the field. I mean, I guess for me, until I actually see him playing football, probably in training camp or something, that's when you start to get excited. But at least seeing him show up and walk in was a somewhat significant development here.
It really was. It was a great sign. It's a great sign for the Browns, for JOK, for their fans to see him walk into the building on the first day of that voluntary offseason program. It certainly beats the alternative of him not showing up on the first day and all of us wondering where he is, where is this going, and is he ever going to be able to play football again? As you mentioned, we probably won't get any definitive answers anytime soon, but the fact he's in the building, I think, is a fantastic sign.
Yeah, Ashley, and again, this is just something we've sort of been monitoring and following and talking about, and it would be great if somebody would just come out and say, like, this is the situation, but the fact that they aren't, it just shows how mysterious this is to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of like neck and spine injuries, particularly when you're talking about a professional athlete, a professional NFL player. Like, it's very different than the average person suffering that injury because of the toll the sport is going to take on your body going forward. But yeah, I mean, it's good to see him going into the building. I mean, because we haven't seen him in that building. We did not see him in the Browns facility the rest of the year after he got injured in that Ravens game. So yeah, I mean, I think the characterization of it as nebulous, like when Andrew said that last week, my first reaction was, oh, we're probably still not going to get an answer on this for a while. But I mean, again, I think it's just the nature of the injury that, hey, they still might not actually know. Like, that timeline just might not exist because of the nature of the neck injury he suffered.
Okay, we're going to wrap up our podcast there, our Tuesday edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Our pods go up there. We might try and go live Thursday night. We're kind of at the mercy of the setup and the timing of everything, but there may be some sort of live element Thursday night. So just get subscribed to our Browns YouTube channel. We're on Instagram, also Orange and Brown Talk. Twitter is Orange Brown Talk. And if you're not a Football Insider subscriber, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. For Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.